burglars don't need cameras anymore.
That sounds like clickbait. Annoyingly, it is also closer to reality than it should be. Because your Wi-Fi is not just internet. It is invisible energy moving through your home. It bounces off walls. It bends around furniture. It reflects off bodies. It changes when people move. And if you know how to read those changes, your router stops looking like a harmless little plastic box and starts looking like something much stranger. A motion sensor you never installed. Now, to be clear, your Wi-Fi is not filming you. There is no tiny camera hiding inside the router watching you eat cereal at 2 a.m. like a judgmental raccoon. But radio waves do not care about your emotional attachment to walls. Walls block eyes. They do not fully block Wi-Fi. And that is the creepy part, because the average person thinks home privacy works like this. Close the door, close the blinds, no camera, you are private. But radio sensing breaks that mental model. Not perfectly, not magically, not like a superhero looking through concrete in 4K, but enough that presence, motion, routines, and activity patterns can become data. And once movement becomes data, your home gets a new privacy problem. So this episode is not a tutorial for criminals. It is the opposite. It is a reality filter. What can Wi-Fi sensing actually do? What is hype? What is real? What is still hard? And why does a technology marketed for safety, elder care, automation, and smart homes also sound like something a burglar would dream about? Because the future is not always a camera on the wall. Sometimes the future is the router you already forgot was there.
Chapter 1. Your router is not innocent. Let's start with the simplest version. Wi-Fi sensing means using wireless signals to infer what is happening in a space. Not by recording video, by measuring how radio signals change. Your router sends out radio waves. Those waves move through the room. They reflect off walls, furniture, appliances, people, pets, doors, and all the normal junk that turns a home into an obstacle course with rent. When nothing moves, the signal environment has a certain pattern. When a person walks through the room, that pattern changes. When someone sits down, stands up, gestures, falls, or moves between rooms, the radio environment changes again. Those changes can be measured, and with enough signal data, enough antennas, enough device placement, and enough machine learning, those changes can become estimates. Presence, motion, location, gesture, speed, angle, activity patterns. That is the core idea. Your Wi-Fi is not seeing the way a camera sees, it is sensing disturbances in the invisible radio field. Think of it like a spider web, not visually, conceptually. A web does not need eyes to know something touched it. It feels the disturbance. Wi-Fi sensing is a little like that, except the web is made of radio waves, the spider is a router, and the fly is you walking to the fridge because apparently the cheese needed checking again. That is why this technology is not some conspiracy fantasy. It has a name: Wi-Fi sensing, WAN sensing, and it is being formalized in IEEE 802.11bf, a Wi-Fi standardization effort focused on using Wi-Fi measurements to estimate things like range, velocity, angle, motion, presence, and gestures. That matters, because once a capability starts moving from research papers into standards, it is no longer just some lab did a spooky demo. It is becoming infrastructure, and infrastructure spreads quietly. The same way Wi-Fi itself became normal, the same way Bluetooth became normal, the same way smart speakers became normal, the same way everyone somehow accepted that their thermostat needed firmware updates. That is the first big reality check. Wi-Fi sensing is real. It is not magic. It is not perfect, but it is real enough that companies, researchers, and standards bodies are taking it seriously. And that means normal people should understand it before it shows up in their router settings with a friendly name like Home Awareness Plus or Motion Comfort Mode, or some other phrase that sounds like it was focus grouped by a scented candle. Chapter 2: How Wi-Fi Can Sense Motion. Now, let's explain the physics without turning this into a punishment. Wi-Fi works by sending electromagnetic waves between devices. Your router talks to your phone. Your laptop talks back. Your smart TV quietly downloads nonsense in the background. Your smart fridge, if you made that life choice, participates in the circus. But those signals do not travel through a home in one clean line. They bounce. They scatter. They take multiple paths. One part of the signal goes directly to the device. Another part reflects off a wall. Another bounces off a table. Another gets disturbed by your body moving through the room. Wi-Fi systems can measure aspects of this behavior. One important type of data is called Channel State Information, or CSI. That is basically detailed information about how the wireless channel behaves across antennas and frequencies. CSI can reveal little changes in the environment because a moving human body changes the radio paths. Again, not video. Signal disturbance. This is why device-free sensing is such a strange idea. You do not need to carry a tag. You do not need to wear a watch. You do not need a phone in your pocket. Your body changes the radio environment just by existing and moving. That is the part that makes people uncomfortable. Because most digital tracking depends on you carrying something. Phone location, Bluetooth beacon, smartwatch, camera image, microphone. Wi-Fi sensing can be different. The person being sensed may not be holding the sensor. They may simply be inside the field. That is why the technology is attractive for smart homes. Fall detection without cameras, presence detection without motion sensors in every room, elder care without filming someone in private spaces, security systems that can tell whether someone is moving indoors, automation that knows whether a room is occupied. There are good uses here, real ones. A camera in a bedroom or bathroom is obviously invasive. A radio-based fall detection system could be less invasive while still helping someone who lives alone. That is the best case version. But every good use has a shadow. Because if a system can detect motion for safety, it can also detect motion for surveillance. If it can tell whether someone is home to turn on lights, it may also be able to tell whether someone is home for someone who should not know. That is the dual-use problem. And it gets even weirder with through-wall sensing. Research has shown that radio signals can sometimes detect human motion through indoor materials like doors or walls, depending on the wall material, thickness, geometry, device setup, and signal quality. That does not mean every wall becomes invisible. Concrete is not the same as drywall. A thick exterior wall is not the same as a hollow interior wall. Distance matters, angles matters, setup matters, calibration matters. But the average person's mental model is still wrong. They think, if I can't be seen, I can't be sensed. Wi-Fi sensing says, not necessarily. And that is creepy enough without pretending your router is a ghost camera. Chapter 3: What burglars can and cannot do. Now let's talk about the burglar part, because this is where we need to be careful. The title is Burglars Don't Need Cameras Anymore. That is a strong title. It is also a metaphor, not a claim that every thief now owns a magic Wi-Fi X-ray gun from a cartoon villain catalog.
A random burglar with a phone is probably not casually standing outside your house, generating a perfect, real-time skeleton map of your family. That is not the realistic claim. The realistic concern is lower resolution, but still serious. Can wireless signals reveal whether someone is home? Can they reveal movement? Can they reveal routines? Can they reveal activity patterns? Could future consumer products or poorly secured devices leak that kind of information? That is the real security question. And frankly, occupancy is enough. A burglar does not need a perfect 3D model of your living room. They do not need to know whether you are making tea, doing yoga, or having a tragic argument with a fitted sheet. They may only need to know, is someone home? Has anyone moved for the last hour? Does this house usually go quiet at 8:15? Are the occupants away? That kind of information can matter, and that is why the scary version of this story is not Wi-Fi makes cameras obsolete. It is your home can leak motion without cameras. That is much more accurate, and maybe more unsettling. Now, practical Wi-Fi sensing has constraints. It often depends on device placement. It may work best with a router and other connected devices forming sensing links. It may need stationary devices. It may require compatible hardware. It may need training or calibration. It may struggle when the environment changes. It may be confused by pets, furniture movement, multiple people, thick walls, or weird layouts. This is why we should not turn the episode into nonsense. The technology is real. The comic book version is not. But here's the reason the privacy risk still grows over time. Technologies that are hard today can become packaged tomorrow. The first version needs experts. The next version needs setup. The later version becomes a menu toggle. That is the pattern. GPS used to be specialized. Now every phone has it. Face recognition used to be a research demo. Now it unlocks your device and haunts public policy debates. Smart speakers used to feel futuristic. Now people argue with a cylinder in the kitchen because it misunderstood the word timer. So when Wi-Fi sensing becomes standardized, commercialized, and bundled into routers, mesh systems, ISP gateways, and smart home platforms, the question changes. Not, can a genius in a lab do this? But, what happens when ordinary infrastructure can? That is where the burglar title becomes emotionally fair. Because criminals usually do not invent technology. They wait for society to deploy it badly.
Chapter 4. Invisible sensing needs visible consent.
So what should normal people do with this? First, do not panic. Panic is not a security strategy. It is just cardio with worse decisions. Second, update your mental model. Your router is not just a dumb pipe. Your Wi-Fi environment may reveal more about your home than you assumed. That does not mean someone is spying on you right now. It means the privacy surface is bigger than cameras and microphones. Third, watch for Wi-Fi sensing features in consumer products. Routers, mesh systems, ISP gateways, smart speakers, home security platforms, wellness monitoring devices, elder care systems. If a device says it can detect motion without cameras, ask how. Is it using Wi-Fi sensing? Is processing local or cloud-based? Is motion data stored? Can you disable it? Can other household members see it? Can the ISP see it? Can the vendor use it? Does it work only inside your own network, or does it create broader exposure? These are not paranoid questions. These are normal questions for invisible sensing. Because invisible sensing has a consent problem. A camera is visible. A microphone might be visible. A motion detector on a wall is at least an object you can point to.
Wi-Fi sensing can happen through infrastructure people do not think of as a sensor. That means the consent layer has to be much more explicit. There should be visible settings, clear opt-ins, local processing where possible, data minimization, no secret motion logs, no burying the feature in a privacy policy written in the language of haunted furniture. If routers become sensors, users deserve to know when sensing is on. And not just the person who bought the router. Guests, roommates, family members, caregivers, people inside the space. If a home is being sensed, the people inside that home should not need a spectrum analyzer and a law degree to find out. Now for practical security. Use strong Wi-Fi security. Keep router firmware updated. Do not leave default passwords. Remove unknown devices from your network. Separate guest devices when you can. Be cautious with smart home systems that ask for broad access. Check whether your router or mesh system offers motion detection features. Disable sensing features you do not use. None of that makes your home radio invisible, but it reduces lazy exposure. And lazy exposure is what most real-world security failures feed on. The goal is not to live in a Faraday cage like a paranoid baked potato. The goal is to understand that your home is becoming a sensor environment. Cameras were only the obvious part.
So where does this leave us? Best case, Wi-Fi sensing becomes a useful, camera-free safety tool. It helps detect falls. It improves home automation. It supports elder care. It makes security systems less dependent on cameras. It gives people safer ways to monitor spaces without filming private moments. That is real value. Most likely, Wi-Fi sensing becomes a quiet, smart home feature that many people use without fully understanding what it can infer. It gets marketed as convenience, as wellness, as safety, as home awareness. Some of that will be genuinely helpful. Some of it will be data collection wearing slippers. Worst case, motion sensing becomes another invisible layer of surveillance inside the home. Routers and connected devices leak occupancy, routines, room usage, sleep patterns, and behavior signals to companies, apps, or attackers. Not because anyone built a cartoon X-ray camera, because the infrastructure got smart before the consent got serious. That is the whole warning. Wi-Fi sensing is not literal X-ray vision. It is worse in a different way. Your home is already full of invisible signals, and those signals can leak motion. 3 takeaways. First, Wi-Fi sensing is real. Radio waves can reveal presence and motion without cameras. Second, the scary title needs nuance. Burglars are probably not walking around with perfect wall hack vision, but rough occupancy and routine detection is exactly the kind of thing that can matter. Third, the real future fight is consent. If routers become sensors, users need to know when their home is being sensed, what data exists, and who gets access to it. That is the clean line. Useful technology is not the enemy. Invisible sensing without visible consent is. So the next time you see your router blinking innocently in the corner, do not panic. Just remember, the walls may hide you from eyes, but they do not make you invisible to radio. Signal over hype. Subscribe to join the expedition.